Hi, I'm Jessica and I'm a developer advocate for Google Assistant. And today we're going to go over an intro to building for Google Assistant because we just launched some really cool tools. So let's get started. And we're going to start off with Google Assistant. So Google Assistant is the virtual assistant that users can have conversations with to get things done. And currently, Google Assistant is available on over 19 languages in 80 countries, and it's on 1 billion devices, which is really amazing. And of course, my first question is always, how can I have my users have all this access to what Google Assistant has? And you can by building your own conversational actions. So you can extend Google Assistant so users can go, hey G, talk to, and then your action's name to activate your content. So here's a couple of terms we want to make sure we go through. So of course, there's Google Assistant, which is the personal virtual assistant between users and Google Assistant. And there are devices, which currently we have many different types of devices. We have some devices that are screenless with our homes and minis. We have some devices like our Android phone that has screens with the possibility of no audio because you keep it muted. And then we have these really amazing smart displays, which really kind of creates an amazing experience for your users. And then we have Actions on Google, which is the platform that you can build your action on, and it lives there and it gets serviced to users through Google Assistant. So how do actions work? So in this diagram, we're gonna have our user, the assistant, which is also the Actions on Google platform, but they talk to one another. So for simplicity's sake, we're gonna keep that as one. And then your conversation action. And so what happens when a user sends a query to Google Assistant will translate if it's audio, that audio to text, and sends that text over to your action. And then your action processes it, figures out what to create, creates a response, and sends that response back to Google Assistant, where Google Assistant will translate that text to speech and send that over to your user. But it could be kind of tricky when you're dealing with raw text of users because we can say things very differently. Like, for example, if a user responds to a question with a yes, that's pretty straightforward. But what about all the variations of yes? Like, that works, sure, why not? Or I agree, go ahead, and so much more. You'll need a tool to manage all of these variations. You'll need natural language understanding, or NLU for short. That way you can process your user's input. All you need to do is identify the different intents your user may want to do, like expressing a yes intent or a no intent or how many players are in a game intent. And then once you've identified those intents, you'll need to provide training phrases for each of them. And each of them should include variations of how a user might express that intent. And by adding these phrases, you're extending the Google Assistant's ability to understand your user's requests that are specific to your brand or service. But this is only one side of the conversation. Conversations are a back and forth, and we have a diagram of the user, the assistant, and your action. So here, the user provides the input to the query, and then the assistant processes that input and sends you that data. Then your action can process that and generate a prompt and sends it back to the assistant. And then the assistant delivers that to the user. So it's the same process as the diagram before, but now we're noting that Google Assistant could provide, or actually Google could provide this additional NLU processing for you. But how do you know when a user says yes, that it's yes for starting a game, and it's not a yes for drinking a potion inside the game? So you need to be able to manage, even though the assistant can give you, they said yes, what is it towards? And so managing the logic of your conversation is key in order to generate the appropriate prompts. In the conversation model, it's both the processing of the user's input and generating a response back. And we're excited to have announced Actions Builder to manage your conversation model. Actions Builder processes your user's input through intent matching and types. And those types are particular points in the user's input. And you use scenes to manage the logic of the conversation so you could construct the appropriate prompts. So let's look into scenes and what they are. And scenes are these logical chunks in your conversation model. They are the executioners of the action. They do the heavy lifting and carry out logic necessary for your conversation to move forward. You could think of them similar to scenes in a play or in a movie. This is how you know if the yes intent is matched, that it's for the start of a new game versus another scene. And also, only one scene can be activated at a time, and you can build user journeys with multiple scenes. You can move from one scene through another scene through transitions. And transitions can also happen by the scene or by an intent. This gives you more control over your conversation. You can also generate multiple user journeys based on the logic of your scenes. This allows for more customization and control of where your user is in the conversation, as well as having multiple paths using the same scene when needed. And these are controlled by your scene's logic. So let's check out the scene's logic. So a scene runs in a loop, providing flexible execution lifecycle that lets you do the things like processing inputs through the intent matching, do slot filling, sending prompts back to the user, and more. Each stage inside the scene are optional, but the flow is always the same, and it always starts with the onEnter. With onEnter, you can add a prompt to the prompt queue, and you can also call your webhook. Then conditions are checked, which are if and else if statements that could check the session, user, or scene parameters. After that is slot filling, which will add a prompt to the next missing slot that you have. And at prompts, the prompt queue is sent to the user via the assistant. After that, the user will have time to respond. When the user responds, the user's input is processed, and if it's matching a slot, the loop starts again by checking conditions. If the user's input matches the intent, then the intent handler is processed. And if there isn't a transition, it goes back to conditions and follows the loop again. And if there's a transition in the intent handler, it will transition to a different scene. Prompts can be added to the prompt queue onEnter, conditions, slot filling, and in intent handlers. You can also call your webhook on these stages as well. Transitions can happen in condition checking when conditions are met, and in the intent handler. So let's go and do a live demo and check out how these tools are actually used. Okay, we're here in the Actions console, and we are in one of my actions, which is a demo action that I built out for this presentation. And we are in the test section of it. So we're going to be testing out an action and actually finishing it off so we can have a complete action by the end of this. So let us activate our action. We could do that a couple of different ways. We could talk to it, we could type it, or we could click the button.
Let's get the test version of Actions Builder demo.
Welcome to Actions Builder demo. Can I give you a silly nickname based on a few simple questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
What is your favorite color?
My favorite color is purple.
What is your favorite animal?
You can also respond by clicking on these suggestion chips here or down here. So I'm going to click dog.
Great. Give me a sec to think of your perfect nickname. I got it. I'll call you Violet Puppy the Brilliant.
So we just interacted with the action. On the left-hand side, as you could tell, was as we were interacting with it. And so it's the back and forth within the action. On the right is the actual logs of the back and forth, but you can see historically what's happened. So on the right-hand side is me talking to the action, and on the left is the action responding back to me. Within these logs, there's also a lot of great information and data. And so if I click on this one, it opens out logs so you could see what's happening in that first one. And as you could see, the user's input happened and it did something. It started the conversation. And the interaction gets matched, starts the action, and then there's this onEnter on the start scene, and it's waiting for the user's information. If you click on each of these rows, you can actually get more information. And so in here, you could see this is the prompt that the user was provided, as well as the suggestion chips. And so there's a lot of great information in here that really is helpful when it comes to debugging. But let's see how this action was actually built out. So let's click over here on develop. And this takes us into the development section of this action. And so this is settings. And in here, I have my name of my action, which is Actions Builder Demo. And if we click over here on default invocation, This shows you that when a user says talk to Actions Builder Demo, it's going to invoke my action, which is fun. It says Actions Builder Demo, your action. And what happens there is that it's going to transition into this start scene. Before that happens, I'm going to reopen that window. We can actually make a call out to our webhook or add a prompt. And so in here, what I like to use this option, and of course this is optional, you don't have to do either, is I like to add the welcome message here because this is right before it goes to its first scene. And so I usually like to do a welcome greeting. Generally, I call my webhook. That way I could check to see if the user, if I've interacted with this user before, if it's a new user, if I know their name, I could acknowledge them by their name as well. And so we add that greeting and that gets added to the prompt queue. And if we scroll down, you could see that here is where we could add the transition. And so having it transition to the start scene. And I'm sure you noticed that this wasn't the whole prompt that we got when we first activated the action. There was a little more. And so let's see what happens. This message gets added to the prompt queue, and let's go into to the start scene. And you can do that two ways. You can go under scenes to start, or you can go my favorite way, where you just go and click using this UI and just click on there and it takes you straight into the start scene. And so here you can see where you're transitioning from, and then you're going into the start scene. And remember, within the scene stages, there is a loop. And so the first stage in that loop is on enter. And so let's click on here, on this on enter. I'm using it. And you could call out your webhook or send a prompt. And you could add in a prompt message. And so here I have the question. Can I give you a silly nickname based on a few questions? And then I have suggestion chips of yes or no. And if we scroll down, that's it. There's a couple things you could do in regards to the adding to this prompt, but there's no transition because remember, in the on enter, this is where you're just adding a prompt. And so we're going to close this window out. So the start scene had that message or that prompt from before. So that's in the queue. Now this new prompt is added to the queue. Then it checks conditions, which there's none. Then checks slot filling, which there's none. And then after that, it goes into releasing that prompt queue and sending it to the user. And that's why we see it from the user's point of view as one message. It's both of those messages combined. And so your scenes help you build the prompts that you're giving back to the user step by step, depending on what you're doing with the user. So here is the welcome greeting and then the question that is for that actual scene. And so that's the logic behind it. There's this greeting aspect, and then there's this in the start scene, there's this question that belongs to that. So let's go back to develop. And let's go back to the start scene. Great. So after that, we give that to the user, then the user can respond back. If the user says no, so when no is matched, what happens here is that we're calling we could call our webhook or we could send our prompt. And so here we're just acknowledging, no worries. If you ever want us to nickname, you know where to find me. And then if you scroll down in here, we can add a transition. And so we're transitioning to end conversation, which is a system scene. And what happens there, it ends the conversation. We don't have to worry about it. So let me close that up. Or if the user says yes, let's click on that. What happens there is, again, we could call our webhook or send a prompt, which we're not doing this time. And we're transitioning to the silly questions scene. And so before we do that, let's actually check out on how these intents are created. So on the left-hand side, we have our no and yes intents. So let's click on intents for the yes intent. And in here is you can add training phrases. And so here are the training phrases that Google Assistant's going to be using to be able to do intent matching for your user. So we have things like, yes, I do, please, of course, sure, okay, totally. We can add, let's do it, and more. So you just add it as simple as that. We're going to hit save. And then let's check out our no intent. It's really similar, except it's all the negatives. So I rather not, no thank you, nah, nope, and no. And so that is how you could tell Google Assistant that there's this idea of no intents and this idea of a yes intent. So let's go back to the start scene. And so when a user says yes, it will transition to silly questions. And so let's click on silly questions scene so we could see that. And of course, when we come in on entrance checked, there's nothing there. And we'll talk a little bit of why I don't have a prompt here on enter. And then conditions are checked. And the statement of scene slot status is final. That's checking to see if all the slots are filled, which they're not. And the first time we come into the scene, then it goes down to slot filling. And with slot filling, it does the first slot, one slot at a time, because you don't want to ask your user multiple questions. You want to ask one question at a time generally. And so we have this idea of a favorite color slot. So let's click on that to see how that's built out. And on the right hand side, you can see that this is the name of the slot I've given. So it's favorite color, and it's using a color type. There's also system types of like number, date, time, and date and time. But I decided that I want to have this idea of color, and color's a very specific thing that I want to be able to pull out from the user's response. And so actually, let's dive into what color looks like. But for this slot, I'm calling it favorite color. So let's go see what color looks like first. So let's scroll down to types. And under types, there's color. And in here, I actually have a couple different colors already added in here. And so you could see, let's go to the bottom one, that there's this idea of key and values. And so you could tell Google Assistant, there's this thing called pink. There's this pink color. Pink is a color. And here are some variations of that. And so this is the key and this is the value. And so I have different variations or synonyms of that kind of color of pink. If you go up, I have this idea and key of jewel. And this one is a little different where I have gold listed under jewel. Even though gold would technically be under yellow, which fun fact, I don't have yellow yet. I have to add that in. But I do have tan, which is strange. Anyways, I decided instead I want to have gold under jewel because it kind of makes me, it's in that same realm for me mentally. Like that is a precious stone. It's a precious material. And so I could do some fun stuff in my back end to say like, hey, if it's jewel color, then let's do something a little different. But again, for this example, I'm just using the context as is, but you could do some fun stuff like that, letting Google Assistant know that when a user says the word cotton, when it comes to anything to do with color, we're meaning white as well. You can also get both of these data points. So if the user says cotton, you can actually receive cotton and do things with that versus just having it be retrieved as white. So let's go back to our silly questions scene. And again, within silly questions, we were in that favorite color. So this is what color is. We told Google Assistant there's this thing called colors. And for this particular slot, we're calling it favorite color. Another thing that you could do is you could also add in another slot using color as its type. But then maybe that other slot could be like least favorite color or not favorite color and do something different here. So you could really use these types in multiple different ways. And so keeping your types being a little more generic and then keeping your slots more specific is a really nice trick. And then we're going to say the slot is required. We could call our webhook, but for this one, we're not. We're going to just send a prompt. And here's the question. What is your favorite color along with suggestion chips? The reason why you would want to put the actual prompt of the favorite color here is because if you're going to have potentially different slots, you're keeping the prompt tethered to that slot versus on enter. Also, you could change it up. You could add more slots, remove slots, and it keeps it a lot cleaner versus if you have it on enter and you have it as favorite color, the favorite color response here, it just makes it harder. Also, this keeps it more module. So we add that and we're going to close this window out. So again, as we're entering this scene, there's nothing on enter. The conditions are not satisfied. It goes to slots, goes okay. The slot has not been filled. We're going to grab that prompt, a favorite color, and then it sends that to the user, and the user could say their favorite color, and the slot will be matched, and it goes back to conditions, checks to see, hey, is the slot filled? Are all the slots filled? Nope. So it's going down. And since this slot is filled, it's going to go into the favorite animal slot. And what's going to do is similar to the favorite color, we have this idea of types of animals. And here I have favorite animals. That's what I'm going to call it in this particular slot. We're going to scroll down. And all I'm asking is, what is your favorite animal, along with some suggestion chips? And so that gets added to the prompt queue. And then after that, that gets sent to the user so they can answer their favorite animal. And if they do, it's going to go, the slot's going to be matched. It's going to go up to conditions. It's going to check, hey, are all the slots filled? And they are this time. So let's click on this and let's scroll up. And so we're checking to see if the slot is filled. You could do a lot of fun stuff in here in regards to data validation. So definitely I would check the docs for that. And then in here, you could call your webhook. But for this one, I decided just to use the send prompt. And there's a couple of things happening in this one. There's 3 things that I want to take note. The first thing is that we're using the speak tags. The speak tags allow you to use SSML, which is speech synthesized markup language, and it allows you to modify the voice and do some fun stuff like adding audio. Here, I'm actually adding a break time. So I'm adding 2 seconds after the action says, give me a second to think of your perfect nickname. And there was that pause. What's actually happening is I'm taking 2 seconds and then it acknowledges that I got it and that I'm going to call that person. Then it's going to grab from the parameter of favorite color. It's going to grab that data and add it here, which for mine was, I wrote purple, but it provided the key of violet. And of course, you could still provide purple if you wanted to. And then in here, it's your favorite animal. And then what's really silly, it either has the brave or the brilliant. And so the difference between these two is that they're the same content, except there's slight variation. And so you could use this variant option and add multiple speak tags. And that way it randomly chooses one over the other. Content is relatively similar, but those are 3 really fun things that you could do. So the first thing is using SSML, being able to talk about those parameters in here, as well as having multiple ways of saying the same, or you have multiple options in regards to how you want to respond to your user, and it's randomly chosen for you, which is great. So that was a lot, but that's a-okay. So after that, this gets added to the prompt queue. And we're going to scroll down, and in here it's going to transition to the scene again. And so there's this idea of a again scene. And so let me close this window or make it smaller. And so let's go to the again scene. And right now there's nothing in there. And this is where we're going to be adding to it. And so I want to add this idea of being able to ask the user if they want to do this again. So I'm going to add this on enter. I'm going to use send it as a prompt. So we're going to add, do you want to do that again? And then we're going to add some suggestion chips where we're going to click here, and then we can add suggestion chips of yes and then no. And so what happens here is that prompt prior, when on that transition to here, from the condition of this is what your nickname is going to be, it's going to add, do you want to do this again, with the suggestion chips as one message. So we're going to click save. And then we don't need conditions, we don't need slot filling, but we do need a handle if the user says yes or no. So if the user says no, what we're going to say is, great, have a great, see you later. See you later. Bye. Okay. And then we're going to add a yes intent. We're going to add yes, and then what we're going to do is going to transition them right back to silly questions, which will start that whole scene again. We can also add a prompt here acknowledging the fact that they're doing it again. So we could say something to the effect of, great, let's do it again. And then we'll hit save. So let's go through this and test this out in the simulator. So let's click on test. Great. Let's talk to my actions demo.
Getting the test version of Actions Builder.
Let's just say yes.
What is your favorite color?
Let's do red.
What is your favorite animal? Great. Give me a sec to think of your perfect nickname. I got it. I'll call you Red Kitty the Brilliant. Do you want to do that again?
And so here we could say yes.
Great, let's do it again. What is your favorite color?
Fantastic. And so it just looped us back and we could do this whole thing again. And of course, if the user says no, it ends the conversation. So that was just an example of how you could build an action using Actions Builder. But wait, there's more. We've updated our Actions SDK where developers can build actions using their preferred tools. The Actions SDK gives you a file-based representation of your action and the ability to use your local IDE. The SDK not only enables local authoring of natural language understanding and conversation schemas, it also allows bulk import and exporting of training data to improve the conversation's quality. And the Actions SDK is accompanied by a command line interface. So you can build and manage an action fully in code using your favorite source control software and of course, continuous integration tools. The best part is it works alongside Actions Builder. So you can build using Actions Builder and then pull the project locally and make changes and then push those changes back up to Actions Builder, allowing teams to work using their preferred tools. Actions Builder and Actions SDK provide conversation components of your action, but you might want to add more elements to enhance your user's experience. Interactive Canvas allows you to build rich game experiences that are more detailed in regards to the visual and really enhances your action. And you could use tools, or it uses tools like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And with this, you can leverage the visuals to support users with a multi-game experience, making it a little easier for users to play your games. Here's a diagram of an action with Actions Builder and a web service. Web services can be used to provide dynamic prompts, make API calls, or check your database. So your Actions Builder or Actions SDK can make a call out to these web services to do those things. And with that, your web service could add in to the prompt things like the Canvas app URL and other metadata, which that gets sent to the device. And then the device, with that information, will make a call to your Canvas app and it'll initialize your web app. And in the web app, the interactive Canvas API is initialized and sends the content to the device. And the users interact with your action can update and request data via your action and your web app. I hope you're excited to build using these new tools. And of course, we got you covered when it comes to resources. So of course, check out our docs where we have all the resources linked there. And if you're the type of learner that you like to have a step-by-step guide, check out our code lab. We have code labs that take you through building your first actions using Actions Builder. And of course, if you want to connect with our community, check out our Twitter and our Reddit communities. And if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag AOGDevs to communicate with other developers. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.